This is I Choose Life News and Views, sponsored by Indiana Right to Life and Right to Life of Northeast Indiana, committed to defending innocent human life for all people of all ages. I Choose Life News and Views is produced by Bot Radio Network in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Welcome to I Choose Life News and Views. This is Abigail Lorenzen. Thanks so much for tuning in for another program with us. We have on today Beverly Jacobson. She is the founder and CEO of Mama Bear Care. And like most nonprofits, there is a really sweet story behind the name, behind the reason the organization exists at all. I came into contact with Beverly because I was at the National March for Life and she was one of the speakers. And I just love the National March organizers always do such a good job of finding awesome speakers, and Beverly is no exception to that. So, Beverly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. What an honor to be part of your program today.
So, start off right away. Tell us what Mama Bear Care is. I think most people get this sense of like, okay, Mama Bears, those are protective. So what are we doing here?
Yep. So I have a Mama Bear story. I'm sure many of us mamas have that moment where we go to and when that fierce love just wells up in you and you have that protectiveness. And for me, I have 9 kids, so you can imagine I have a lot of Mama Bear moments, but the one that I'm talking about today happened when I was 18 weeks pregnant with our youngest daughter, and we had received a diagnosis for her of Edwards syndrome. And I was terrified because what I had been told is that she probably was not going to make it to birth. And if she, by some miracle, did make it, she would probably only live a few days, maybe a few weeks if we were lucky. And so, of course, this was devastating. I had never been through anything like this before. And so I was meeting with a specialty doctor trying to get more information. I just wanted hope. I wanted someone to throw me a lifeline because I felt like I was drowning in depression. And when I sat down with this doctor, the first words, I kid you not, the first words out of his mouth were, "So you're here to talk about your retarded daughter." Oh. And the rest of the interview, if you can believe it, actually went downhill from there. I just couldn't believe I was hearing this from a medical professional. He talked about her having a futile life, that she would be a drain on the family, mentally, emotionally, and financially. And that is an exact quote. So I felt gut punched. I didn't know how to respond in the moment because I was so unprepared for a professional to talk to me like that.
Right.
So I drove home crying and shaking and thinking of all the things I wish I had said in the moment. And I just remember sitting in the driveway before I went back into my house and just crying and praying. And I look back on that time with the Lord in my van as my Mama Bear moment because I realized that nobody in the world was going to love this little girl the way her family did. And it was up to me to be her voice. I needed to be ready to advocate for her. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know what was ahead of us, but I just felt that fierce love sweep over me. And I look back on that day as a turning point in our journey. And, it was a process. Obviously, our sweet girl, Verity is her name. She was born full term, and we were overjoyed because she had already overcome statistics to be born alive.
Yeah.
And we spent 18 days in the NICU, and that was a steep learning curve. We didn't know if we would get to bring her home from the hospital, but we did. She had medical equipment. I'm not a medical professional. My degree is in English education, and I'm a homeschool mom, right? So I learned on the job. I learned what I needed to know, when I needed to know it. And day by day, step by step, we just found ourselves marching towards a new normal. And I didn't expect to be in that position, but here I was, a medical mama. I will say, looking back though, that pregnancy and that first year, maybe 2 years after Verity came home, that was the hardest time in our lives.
Sure.
I mean, we had, 8 healthy children, and you can imagine I was already a little overwhelmed as a homeschool mom of a large family. Add to that all the special needs that Verity had and the learning curve we had with her. And this season of our lives was so difficult. It was hard on my marriage. It was hard on our kids. We had teenagers at the time, and a couple of them went through their own journey of depression and really being overwhelmed with some dark and difficult things. And I didn't even realize it as the mom because I was drowning, just trying to keep Verity alive. And being told that this condition, many of these babies, they said, didn't even make it to their first birthday. And so, we were living in fear. When were we going to have to say goodbye? And then how do you talk to your kids about that? It was already, difficult to walk the journey with them and explaining to them that their baby sister might not get to come home. And then now, they were loving on her and just watching her grow. And yet that tension of the not knowing, it was so hard. So we came out of this really hard season. And in years 2 and 3, we started to realize that actually, you know what? We're not going to wait for her to die. She seems like she's settling in here on earth. The Lord blessed us with this time. I don't know why, because it is true. It's a life-limiting condition. And it is true that many of these children do pass away young. Verity just, didn't have some of the complexities and the complications that a lot of the kiddos do. And so she was with us. And finally, we got some nursing care. We didn't know we could qualify for that. And we started doing life. We have the new normal. And we're realizing, actually, this is beautiful. This is amazing. And Verity brought so much joy. So whereas I had a lot of fear going into this, not, having any kind of a background to deal with a child with profound needs, we realized that actually there's so much joy and so much blessing in caring for a child like this that I wouldn't have imagined. And so we finally felt like we were getting our heads above the water. We were not just surviving, but beginning to thrive and find that new stride. And really, my heart was just, I was in the community. I was seeing people post, we just got a diagnosis and we were told that our baby's not going to make it. And the doctor is pushing abortion. And my heart was just breaking for these moms because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be told that your child has a condition that is considered incompatible with life. And I just felt like I wish that I could sit down and talk to them and share with them what I've learned. And I know I'm not a medical expert, but I think a little bit of support will go a long way. And
Sure.
so, what might that look like? So my husband and I were kind of praying. We weren't necessarily looking for to start a nonprofit per se.
Nobody ever is.
I'm sure a lot of people are laughing as you hear that because that's often how this starts, right? The Lord gives you a passion. You just have a burden for a need that you see. And this was a community I didn't even know existed before, we walked that road ourselves. Well, in the fall of 2020, I saw that Save the Storks had put out an advertisement for a pro-life innovators summit.
Oh.
I didn't know what that was, but I thought, I'm pro-life and let me read about this. And so we read about it, and it basically was an opportunity for those who had an idea for a pro-life ministry to come and be part of this training, to get education and help getting ready to set up a nonprofit, basically. And then it's like a Shark Tank kind of a thing for nonprofits. Yeah. And so I had been thinking of this idea, and the name in my head was Verity's Village, based on our daughter Verity and her, our journey with her. So long story short, because I could go into a lot of details, but Save the Stork really is why we exist today. Because when they heard our story, when they heard what I wanted to do to support moms who were getting a prenatal diagnosis, and then it seemed like the next logical step for them was, okay, when do you want to schedule the termination? That is a huge need in the pro-life community and a niche that often gets overlooked. And so Save the Storks gave us a $10,000 grant. And so if I had any doubts about what our next step was going to be, they were erased. It was clearly a huge open door. We're going to go through this. We're just going to see what happens. So we launched in 2021 with the name Verity's Village. So that was it's still our legal name, but Mama Bear Care emerged when we really wanted to have a better way to explain what we do to care for these mamas. And really, we were calling them mama bears because of that, as you alluded to at the beginning, just that innate sense of wanting to protect your baby and knowing that it seems like there are all these forces against you, that society doesn't value these children. The medical community doesn't necessarily always speak with grace and compassion. They're speaking of what they would term fatal fetal anomalies or a terminal diagnosis. And, we believe language matters. We do in the pro-life movement, right? We
Right.
call it a baby, not a fetus, even though it means the same thing, but a baby. That's what this little life is. And so we use the term life-limiting diagnosis, which helps us acknowledge we don't know how long a baby's life is going to be with any kind of a genetic condition, but there is life. And as long as there is life, we're here to support the family. We want to honor the life that is, whether that life ends up being long here on earth or short, because that life is precious and unique and is never going to be replaced. And so Mama Bear Care is a way for us to walk alongside these mama bears as they experience the devastation of hearing the news about, something's going on with their baby, but we can come along and offer hope and encouragement because we know that even in the midst of grief, there can still be joy. And termination only takes away the opportunity for joy and blessing and the opportunity to make memories with your baby too. So it has been quite a journey, but 4 years plus now of working with moms in this space. I can share more what we do to provide Mama Bear Care. That looks like, for one thing, they would probably come into our prenatal support group, which is on Facebook. Our group is called From Diagnosis to Delivery. And really, we kind of tag on and beyond because we're here as long as they want to be part of our community. They're welcome to be with us. But from the get-go, we want to shower them with love. We send a welcome package that includes a special pregnancy journal because
Cool.
most pregnancy journals are happy, happy, joy, joy, rainbows and unicorns. And this is a different journey, but it's important to be able to process those emotions, to, name your baby and to walk through your hopes and dreams for your baby. Sure, they're going to look different, but even in that, just having that way to walk through, it's almost like we can hold your hand by giving you this pregnancy journal. The pregnancy guide from diagnosis to delivery is basically everything I wish I had known in book form. What kinds of questions should you ask your doctor? What should you put in a birth plan when you don't know whether you're going to have a burial or a birthing? Do you have a baby shower? What might you think about in those terms? So we give gifts for baby as well, along with that package. So that's kind of their first introduction to us, is hopefully just a little love package that comes in. We have a Mama Bear Care Coordinator. Her name is Catherine, and she actually was one of the very first mamas who jumped into the support group when I went on a whim.
That's not surprising either.
Right? I just set this
Love
up
it.
seemingly on a whim, but then, in the next following months is when we were forming our nonprofit. So Catherine has really been with us from the beginning. And as a mama who received a diagnosis, went through time after time, actually, she had to push back against doctors telling her that she needed to abort this child and, resisting and finally, even changing care teams, going to another hospital to deliver that would be more supportive. And then she did give birth to her little girl, Indiana. And Indiana lived for 6 amazing weeks. And then the Lord took her to heaven. So Catherine has been through it all. She's been through the pregnancy with a diagnosis. She's been in the NICU with her baby. She's been through the bereavement process. And on top of that, she herself is a NICU nurse. And she's also worked labor and delivery. She just has a heart for this community. And about 1.5 years ago, she joined our team. Right now, part-time, but Lord willing, as we can grow our base of support, we would love for her to be full-time because the need is huge. There are more mamas who need that one-on-one connection, that person who is going to be their go-to helping them prepare the birth plan, helping them prepare their families, their children. She has been there for families prepping for surgery for their little ones who have been born. She's helped them change hospitals. But she is absolutely an integral part of our Mama Bear Care program. Along with our counselors, we also have pastoral counselors who have partnered with us so we can offer counseling services to families who, just marriage or couples or individual counseling they offer in addition to the group sessions that they provide on a monthly basis. So those are some of the ways that we try to provide some tangible support for mama bears in our community.
Yeah, I think one thing people don't realize if they've not been through it is how much of a stress on a marriage that diagnosis can be, especially if spouses aren't seeing eye to eye about what the way forward should be. And I
Yes.
think especially moms, because we are physically connected, right? And
Yes.
those hormones are creating emotional connections. We do, we can be very vicious about protecting these babies. And if dad's not right on board with us, that can cause a lot of stress and a lot of relationship
Yes.
stress.
You're right about that.
Yeah. But also just, expectant loss. That's a thing
Hmm.
that I didn't realize even existed until
Yeah.
I started delving more into the birthing world.
Yeah.
But expectant loss is a very real kind of grief. And that's something that a lot of people need help processing because it's just not well recognized in our society. So that those counseling services, I imagine, are really helpful.
Yes, it is sometimes called anticipatory grief, and it is just, yeah, and it hits you out of nowhere. Of course, I lived with it during the pregnancy, and then really the first year, 2 years. I hate to say it this way, but the reality is we were kind of on one hand waiting for her to die because that's what we were told,
Yeah.
and doing everything we could to support her in her own, developmental curve that she has her own little curve. And even still, she's 8 years old. I can't even believe that we just celebrated her
Yeah.
8th birthday. But it will sometimes hit me just out of the blue because I've made many connections in this world. And in fact, just recently, one of our little friends who is about a year and a half older than Verity, he just suddenly passed away after a very traumatic series of seizures, and he just didn't come out of that. And oh my goodness, like that hits you like a wave out of nowhere, and you're just reminded that, oh yeah, this is a life-limiting condition, and we are living life and enjoying it to the fullest and trying not to take life for granted, but it's still there. It hangs over you. And like you said, it is a weight on a marriage, on any relationships. A lot, sadly, we have walked with mamas who have suffered the loss of their spouse or their partner just walks out because they can't handle, whether it's bereavement or caring for, a child with significant needs. And it grieves me so much because it doesn't have to be that way. But yeah, it affects friendships. Sometimes friends leave. They don't really know what to say. And it's a difficult life. I'm not going to sugarcoat that.
I've seen with other relationships where things start getting hard and friends say to the person, you're talking about this too much. Like you're spending too much time thinking about this. You need to move on.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that some of those same dynamics come into play here as well. And you do lose friends over this because they don't understand what this is doing to you and how hard it is to live in that limbo of, I want to make the most of every day. I want to plan for this child's future, but I also don't know if there is a future. I don't know if there is a tomorrow.
Right.
I don't know if there's a 3 years from now.
Yeah.
And so you're having to live in this it's very much a state of faith. Like, I'm just going to trust in God and keep moving forward. And if this person's life ends, then we'll cross that bridge.
Yeah.
So that dynamic, I think, is a really hard place to live. And it puts a lot of stress on the relationships in your life. If they're not in it with you, then they may not be able to tolerate that tension very well.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard place. And I'm thinking of the different phases. We really serve people in different parts of the journey. So there's, the pregnant mama, the expectant parents, and they're, looking ahead to delivery, whatever that's going to look like and beyond. And then there are medical mamas, medical mama bears and dads, who are trying to care for a child with significant needs. And then we have our bereaved parents. And what you were saying, I've heard that in every part of the journey. Our bereaved parents, for them, it's really hard when their friends don't understand that they can't just get over this.
Yeah.
A well-meaning friend, might think, well, you knew that this was kind of the end. You were told the diagnosis, and they don't understand that the grief is real. And just like losing anyone close to us, we all have our own grief journey that's going to look different for everybody. But it's hard, for mamas who have experienced loss. It's really hard for them to know how to connect to friends who haven't experienced that. And then moms who were in it, medical mama bears, like that is a whole other level of hard. It's day in, day out with a child who is 100% dependent on me for her existence. And that is physically draining. It's mentally and emotionally draining. And, I adore Verity. I would not trade life with her for anything. I'm so grateful. But it does take a toll. And there are certain things that we just say no to because we know it's just hard. It's hard to carry her out or get, sometimes things are not necessarily accessible with a wheelchair. So it's definitely hard and something that hopefully our ministry and the people in our community can help us raise awareness about what that looks like so that we can be better friends, so we can be better, brothers and sisters in Christ who, if you're local to someone and you can wrap your church around that person, just understand we are needy.
Yeah.
We need things too. I am always grateful when people want to learn about Verity and they want to help with her somehow. And I don't talk about this a lot, but a lot of times I think, I'm here too. Like Mama's here and people ask, how's Verity doing? Not as many people say, how's Mama doing? How are you doing, Mama? I know this is hard for you. So, just some things that we can keep in mind that if you haven't walked in those shoes, just know that it's hard and just know that even a simple, how are you, Mama? How are you, Dad? Like, let's wrap around the parents too.
So, Beverly, you've been sharing a lot about what your family has gone through and then what Mama Bear Care does for other people. But I want to back up a little bit and I want to talk about, in particular, Verity, because I don't know a whole lot about Edwards syndrome my own self. And I would love to know, what does this look like for her? I think it's a chromosomal abnormality, right?
It is.
A variant.
So Down syndrome is an extra 21st chromosome. It is actually trisomy 21 is another name for that, but we know it of it as Down syndrome. Edwards syndrome is trisomy 18. It's an extra 18th chromosome. So like many conditions, it can be on a spectrum. So it's hard to say exactly, what the kiddo is going to be like. And the complexities, there are often multiple complications along with Edwards syndrome. There may be heart conditions. There may be, some issues with the internal organs. So it really depends on what the total picture might be. But for Verity, she is developmentally delayed. She is nonverbal. She is not able to eat by herself. She has a G tube. So she has been 100% tube fed. She got my breast milk the first year plus. And then
that is amazing.
I pumped for 14 months for this girl. Like that is
way to go.
Mama Bear right there.
That is.
Yeah.
That's a hard journey by itself.
Yeah. So she has a tube. She was born with clubbed feet. So she's had surgeries on not only her feet, but also her hips. She had dysplasia. So she is at 8 years old. She is working with her walker, her gait trainer.
Cool.
I visualize the day when she is going to walk into church without assistance, just her walker, and every eye will be, we will be weeping when that happens. But
Yeah.
she definitely is interactive. I think she understands quite a bit, even though she can't verbalize her feelings. But, those are some of the things. She does go to school 3 days a week with her home health care nurse, and she does need 100% hands-on care and assistance. But she's thriving in her own special way.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. So people who want to get involved, you guys are a national organization, right? You operate largely online. You're sending people care packages.
Yep.
how do people get involved?
Yeah,
Because you mentioned like mamas need things too,
right.
papas need things too. Like how does someone contribute to those people who do need
Yeah,
things?
and Mama Bear Care is all about caring for Mama Bear so that she can give that fierce love and tender care to her baby. And as you said, we have served all over the United States. Not quite all 50 states are represented, but many, over 40, 41, 42.
Cool.
And we're closing in on at least 20 countries that we have sent packages to and provided support for other mama bears in other countries as
Wow.
well. So, absolutely, this is something that we do by phone, by Zoom, by text. You know, a lot of personal connections can be made, even though we're not in person. Plus, the physical gifts that we send through the mail. So mamabearcare.org is our website, and we're praying for an army of Mama Bear supporters, those who really have a heart for this community and would be able to join as monthly supporters, really any amount. I mean, it's astonishing that we have been existing mostly on one-time gifts, but as we have really expanded and people have found out about us, you know, the needs are great and we need to be able to hire staff. And so for those who are able to give a monthly commitment of any amount, mamabearcare.org gives a kind of a breakdown of let you know where your donations go. And then you can pick a level that works for you and your budget. But right now, prayer is huge for the families that we serve, and then the financial support. And then as we grow, you know, I would love to get connected with people who can help us, you know, with graphics and social media and all that. Unfortunately, I don't have the budget to offer jobs right now, but
Sure.
I anticipate, you know, a lot of growth. March for Life was a huge open door that I never anticipated, but they invited me, and what an honor to get to share about Verity and our journey from stage. So as word has gotten out, we're just excited to see where people lead others to join the Mama Bear movement and support this. Once you know somebody who has been affected by it, certainly let them know that we're here, that we can walk alongside them. And then if you can, you know, pray about it and see if you can join us as a monthly partner. Not that we, you know, one-time gifts are a blessing as well, and we can help you do that as well. But happy to connect, happy to talk to your community too if you need a speaker or, you know, just want me to share more about the needs that we serve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, Beverly, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
51 years of defending innocent human life is a cause for celebration. You're invited to celebrate with Right to Life of Northeast Indiana at their annual banquet, Saturday evening, April 12th at the Mirage Banquet Hall in Decatur. They'll feed you. Then you can hear from NFL veteran and Super Bowl champion Matt Burke. Space is limited, so get your tickets today before they're gone. You can reserve individual tickets or host a table. Get more information at ichooselife.org.
You've been listening to I Choose Life News and Views. If you have questions about this program or if you'd like to support the fight for life, please call 260-471-1849 or go to ichooselife.org, because without the right to life, no other rights matter.